Hello, welcome everybody. Welcome to Secret Atlas's second ever webinar. So today's webinar is all about East Greenland, and in particular, expedition microcruise in East Greenland. So I'm going to start with a little bit of housekeeping. Everyone who is in this call, your cameras, microphones are all switched off. So not to worry, we can't hear and we can't see you, but hopefully you can hear and see me. And if anyone has any questions as we go, we have got my wonderful colleague Margarita, who has joined us, and she is on the Q&A function tonight. So if you do have any questions, do pop them in the Q&A function and Margarita will get back to you. And we have a time slotted at the end to go over any other questions, but any questions we don't get to, we will come back to you via email, most likely later today or tomorrow. For those of you who have not met me, my name is Lewis Morecambe. I'm one of the expedition specialists here at Secret Atlas, and I'm very excited to share everything about the magnificent Scoresbysund with you. So let's not delay any longer and let's join. So where is Scoresbysund? So for those of you who don't know, so Scoresbysund is this fjord system here. Scoresbysund is in fact the biggest fjord system in the world. And just north of Scoresbysund is East Greenland National Park, which is the biggest national park in the world. So we operate trips in both destinations, and we'll come on to our itineraries shortly. But not only does Greenland have the world's biggest fjord system, not only does it have the world's biggest national park, but it is actually the biggest island as well. So it's winning the awards. But as well, Greenland is home to the second largest ice cap. So it's a real unique, beautiful destination. And you're probably looking at the map of Greenland here, and you're noticing all of these Greenlandic names. So we've got Tasselak, we've got Ittoqqortoormiit, and you're probably thinking to yourself, Scoresbysund doesn't sound that Greenlandic. That's because it isn't. So the name Scoresbysund actually comes from William Scoresby. He's a British scientist, whaler, explorer, and he was the first person to map and chart Scoresbysund. So that's where it gets its name from. But William was by no means the first person to step foot in Scoresbysund. It has been inhabited hundreds of years before William. It was originally inhabited by the Thule people. So the Thule people are the ancestors of the modern day Inuits, and they originated from Alaska, northern Canada, and roughly around 1100 AD, they migrated across to Greenland. Originally, they settled on the western side of Greenland, but a hardy few did make the journey across the ice and settled in Scoresbysund and Northeast Greenland National Park. But Greenland today, it's 95% of the inhabitants live on the west coast and only 5% live over on the east coast, the majority of which are in Tasselak, and then we've got a community in Ittoqqortoormiit as well, which we'll come on to in greater detail in the call. But other of you are probably wondering how we get to East Greenland, and in particular Scoresbysund, where all of our trips start. So we have 3 itineraries over in East Greenland, all of which we start from Keflavik Airport in Reykjavik, Iceland. So we will meet you on day 1. We'll meet you at Keflavik Airport, and we have a small charter flight, which is just for Secret Atlas guests, and we will fly over to Constable Point. Now, this flight, it's an hour and a half. If we've got a clear day, it is a really beautiful flight as well. So as we depart and leave Iceland, roughly sort of 50 minutes into the flight, we will start to see the magnificent ice cap. And as we head over into Scoresbysund, as we make our descent, we will start to see lots of white dots. And as we descend closer, we will soon realize that there are hundreds of icebergs. And then we make our landing at Constable Point, which is in Hurryfjord, which is where all of our trips start. So the airport, it's basically a landing strip and a small outbuilding, and our boat, it's about a kilometre walk to get to the boat. All of the luggage and heavy items will be transported for us and will be waiting for us when we board the boat. But our trips we've got 3 trips. So we have what we call this East Greenland Explorer, which is our traditional 8-day itinerary. So typically we'll join the boat in Hurryfjord and we'll head out and we'll explore deeper into Scoresbysund. Most typically we'll come down into Ofjord here and we'll spend 8 days really exploring Scoresbysund. But most excitedly, for 2025 and 2026, we are running a 12-day combination trip, which not only focuses on Scoresbysund, but it also focuses on Northeast Greenland National Park, which is a national park. It's 180 nautical miles north of Scoresbysund. So for that trip, it is a 12-day trip just to allow us enough time to explore both destinations. But for that trip, we will come out of Scoresbysund. Coming out of the mouth of the Sund, this is a really good place to spot bird life and whales. But we will head out into sea and we'll head up north, and we'll typically do this transit overnight. So you'll be sleeping and we'll wake up in Northeast Greenland National Park. So we'll usually enter Ittoqqortoormiit and we'll explore the fjord system there. But one question we get a lot is, what is the difference between Scoresbysund and Northeast Greenland National Park? The fact that it's a national park has a lot of benefits. So it's a protected area. Scoresbysund is it's an inhabited area, so it is a hunted area. So once we get up into the national park, all the wildlife is protected up there, so it does give us greater chances of spotting wildlife. And I'll come on to the wildlife, which we could expect to see a little bit later. But not only the wildlife is the fjord system, it is a lot narrower, it's a bit more mazy, it's a bit more wiggly, and being a small boat, we can get into those fjords. So it's a real remote destination, real beautiful destination. And then the last trip that we run is what we call our Northern Lights photo tour. So in East Greenland, it's a very short season that we run. We only operate from late August through to the second week of October. Once we get to the second week of September, that's when we will start getting good hours of daylight to witness the Northern Lights. And as we move closer into October, our last 2 trips are specific Northern Lights departures. So we've got very good chances, and it is one of the best. We're located at 70 degrees north. So it's one of the best places to witness the Northern Lights. And being in the fjord system, it almost is a little microclimate of its own. So we can usually find, over the 8 or 12 days, we can usually find some clear skies and get you photographing the Northern Lights. They are called photo tours because we do have, all of our trips will have 2 expedition guides, but our photo tours actually have the benefit of a 3rd guide who is there to help guests with photography and a little bit of post-production workshopping as well. But don't let that put you off. If you are not a photographer, if you just take pictures on an iPhone, that's absolutely fine. Like, that extra guide is there to even help you with your iPhone settings. But we do have a webinar later this week on our photo tours, which is on Thursday. So do join us if you are interested in hearing a little bit more about our photo tours. So why choose a micro expedition? For us here at Secret Atlas, so we have 2 ships, both of which are only 12 passenger ships. So it's a real intimate experience on board. We only have 6 guests in our Zodiac. So again, if you're a photographer or if you've got some equipment, you've got lots of room in that Zodiac. So compared to some of the bigger operators, it's that real intimate experience. But we have one of the highest guide ratios for the polar regions. So for every 12 guests we will have 2 expedition guides. And for all of our trips, we do usually sell out, but if we don't get to capacity, we will still always maintain 2 guides on any of our trips. So it's that real one-on-one time you get with the guides and the expedition team. And the expedition team, they've got a big background in polar travel, polar history. A lot of them are sort of marine biologists or ornithologists. So very experienced people. Another thing about Secret Atlas, so both of our ships, we have got the open bridge policy. So the bridge is open 24 hours a day. So it's a great place to go, grab a coffee, sit with the captain and find out about where we're heading or where we've been. And they're more than happy to show you a bit about the technology on board. So it's really great if you've got families or if you're like me, just a big kid. Yes. Furthermore, so the one difference which sets us apart to the bigger operators is our schedule. So our schedules are very flexible. So it's obviously heavily dictated on not only the weather, but also the ice conditions that we may encounter. But because we don't run to a schedule, it gives us greater flexibility. Now, one really good example of this was I was fortunate enough to be over in Scoresbysund just this September, and we were out on a hike with our two guides, John and Mette. We reached a viewpoint, and it was the most magnificent view down onto the fjords. We could see icebergs, we could see glaciers in the distance, and Mette, she always likes to do, and she always says when we're out on hikes and expeditions, she says, let's just take 5 minutes, everyone find a quiet space and have 5 minutes of peace and zen. And within this 5 minutes, you couldn't hear a pin drop, but we were lucky enough. Within those 5 minutes, we heard the almighty sound of a glacier calving in the distance, and then we saw the water ripple. And being just 12 guests in that environment really allowed you for that opportunity. If you're making a landing with 100 people, it'd be very difficult to get everyone to be sat and be quiet at the same time. But I feel when you're disembarking and you're only 12 guests, it's that real connection you get with the nature, which really does set us apart. And that being said, like, we are very flexible. So if we see something of real interest, especially if we've got photographers, if we've got a good muskox sighting, like, we can spend 2, 3, 4 hours with that one animal. You know, we don't need to be at a certain place at a certain time. So it's very flexible, but the guides are always in discussion with the guests, making sure everyone's happy and making sure it's all going to plan. But the beauty of East Greenland, both Scoresbysund and the national park, is really about the landscapes. So I've touched on it already, but the icebergs really do stand out in East Greenland. So the icebergs that we encounter, they all engulf the ships. They are 2-3 times bigger than the ship. They're the size of sort of warehouses. They're incredible. But what we really like to do, because we have got a small ship, we can really play with the icebergs. So we can do a 360 around the iceberg on the bigger ship, but we also can drop the zodiacs and get you up closer to the icebergs as well. But we always like to visit the icebergs when in East Greenland, at the time of the year we're running, we have really long sunsets and sunrises. So we'll have a sort of sunset 3 to 4 hours long sometimes, and we'll get those beautiful pinks, those beautiful orangey colors. We'll get the sun shining on the iceberg as well. And when you go around 360, you see all the different colors, all the different ice formations within that, and you're looking at a piece of ice which is 4,000 plus years old. And one of the beauty, when we're out on the zodiacs, if we see a smaller bit of ice, we can pick that bit of ice back, we can bring it back to the ship, and you could be sitting having your gin and tonics, your whiskies, your cognacs with a nice bit of ice, which is 4,000 years old, which is a real unique experience. But it's not all about icebergs. Over in East Greenland, we've got some really beautiful mountain peaks coming down. Obviously, we've got the ice cap up here, so we've got lots of glaciers coming down into the valleys. We've got lots of braided rivers. So it's a real variety, real unique destination. And as I mentioned, Northern Lights. So one of the best places in the world to see the Northern Lights. And a lot of people ask, well, how do we photograph Northern Lights from a ship? So we run our Northern Lights tours later in the season, so going into October. And this is when the sea ice does start to return to East Greenland. So we want the ship to be as stable as possible. So there will be some evenings where we will allow the sea ice to engulf the ship, and that adds a real nice stability, so we can get out on deck with our tripods to photograph the Northern Lights. But it's not just about the nature, it's about the villages as well. So as mentioned, we do visit a town called Ittoqqortoormiit, and I've got a slide coming up on that which I want to go into in a little bit more detail. As the wildlife in East Greenland, I do want to talk about the wildlife. East Greenland as a whole, I never sell it as a top wildlife destination. So if I have someone who's inquiring and they want to see polar bears, they want to see walrus, they want to see a lot of wildlife, I'll typically say Svalbard is probably the better destination for you. But that's not to say East Greenland isn't good for wildlife. We do have really good encounters on our trip. It's just not the main focus of the trip. But Having said that, this year we had some fantastic encounters. So all of these pictures are from expeditions this year. One of the biggest draw cards is the musk ox. So we've got a very high success rate of seeing the musk ox. But to really give you the best opportunity, booking that combination trip of Scoresbysund and Northeast Greenland National Park does give it to you. East Greenland, well, Greenland as a whole is home to the polar bear. So we do see polar bears on our trip. We've got one in the middle here playing on a bit of sea ice. So to give you a sense of success rate of polar bears in East Greenland, we ran 7 trips this year. We saw polar bears on 4 of the trips. So being a smaller ship, we have got good opportunity to go and find those bears. But as I say, it's not the focus. If that is your focus, Svalbard probably is the destination for you. But not only that, we have really good encounters with the Arctic fox. We've got really good encounters with the hare, bird life as well. So we've got the Arctic terns. We've got lots of duck life, so we've got eiders, we've got geese, but the whales as well in East Greenland. So again, I never sell this as a whale trip. If we get whales, it's a really nice combination. But the exciting thing is we are on expedition. We never know what's around the corner. We never know what's going to happen. We've got 2 expedition guides up at the bridge looking for wildlife. The captain, the vice captain of the ship, they're all looking for wildlife. So the excitement that you might see something at any time is a real possibility. But in terms of whales, I'd say humpback is the most frequented whale that we see on the trip, but there are sort of 6 species of whales which have been spotted in Scoresbysund. So as I say, we are always on the lookout. We are always looking for wildlife. But yes, the culture. So for me, this is what really stands East Greenland and Greenland as a whole out, is the local culture. So it is settlements. These are Inuit settlements. So this town is Ittoqqortoormiit. Now, don't worry if you can't pronounce that. If you do join one of our trips, you might not be able to pronounce it on day one. But when you disembark the ship, I guarantee you'll have learned how to have said it. We'll run a workshop on board. But no, we run a really beautiful excursion in the town of Ittoqqortoormiit. So one of our guides, she is a local. She lives and works in the town. Now, primarily Ittoqqortoormiit. So this year actually is a very special year. Sorry, next year, 2025, because it is the 100th birthday of the town. So Ittoqqortoormiit was set up almost 100 years ago as to relieve some of the pressure on other towns such as Tesselac and some of the western Greenland towns. So today we're currently looking at our population of around 400 people year round. But as I say, our local guide, she lives and works in the town, and she'll give a real beautiful explanation of the culture, the way of life. But recently they have had to transition more and more towards tourism because they are having more and more restrictions put in place on what they can hunt, and they're having quotas on what they can hunt. And they actually can no longer export hunted goods outside of Greenland. So that's a big source of income which was lost for this local community. So they are leaning towards tourism. So we work with one family in particular in the town, and as I say, she'll do a really beautiful tour of the town. You'll get to visit the church, you'll get to visit, there is actually a local tourism office which has a very small gift shop, but we also visit, she opens up her house and she does a traditional Greenlandic food tasting. Now it is obviously going to be local produce, so it may not be for everyone, but obviously we will make you aware of that before you enter the house. But it's a real unique experience. It's a culture like no other. Their primary income is still hunting. Most of the people in this town, they are hunters. They actually prefer the winter months because that's when they've got the sea ice. It's when they can get out, use the snowmobiles and hunt. But we only have access to this town 3 months of the year. So August, September, and early October is when the sea conditions allow us to get in. If you're coming at any other time of year, the only way to reach this destination is by helicopter, but reaching it on an expedition ship is the best way. Now, I used an analogy the other day in our Svalbard presentation about the birthplace of Secret Atlas, and this was in fact Ittoqqortoormiit. So our owner, Michele, he's a sailor originally, and he sailed to Ittoqqortoormiit on a very small sailing lot with just 5 crew. And they disembarked to town and they had a really organic, natural experience, a really good interaction with the locals. And then as he was rebuilding his sailboat, he noticed a much bigger ship of around 200 people come in, and they did overrun this town. And that's where the spark for Secret Atlas came. Small expedition micro cruising. You know, when we're making a disembarkation at Ittoqqortoormiit, we are doing it in an organic way. We're doing it in a natural way. We're not overrunning the town. We're not burdening the town with any pressure. And we are free to walk around the town as well. And there have been stories of the supermarket in Ittoqqortoormiit is a fantastic experience to go and see what the local live off of, what they buy in the supermarket. But there has been stories of the bigger ships coming in and they just don't have that understanding, and they've brought fresh produce, and this community only gets deliveries twice a year. But one quick funny story, I actually visited Ittoqqortoormiit on a Saturday, and I've got the picture of the football pitch here for good reason. So as I said, it was a Saturday, and we was walking through the village with the guide, and I noticed lots of children running around. But I said to the guide, I said, "Oh, it feels very quiet. Where are all the adults?" And she turned around to me and she said, "Oh, well, Man United are playing, and they all support Man United." So they was all gathered round in one of the local halls watching Man United, which made me laugh. They're very cut off, one of the most remote villages in the world, but they still watch Premiership football. But there we have it. It's a unique destination. And yes, just to touch on the onboard experience. So as I say, once we pick you up from Keflavik Airport and we take you over, everything is included. So we don't charge any extras here at Secret Atlas. So all of your excursions are included. We typically will run 2 excursions a day. And when I say excursions, we are talking about either Zodiac cruising. So we've got the 2 smaller Zodiacs on both of our ships. So we'll be cruising, looking at the icebergs, looking at the glaciers, looking at the wildlife. But we also do run hiking excursions as well. Now, being a small group of just 12, we can split that group up. So if we have a few people who want to go off and do a big hike, we got the capacity for allow that to happen, and then the rest of the group can have a more gentle, maybe a Zodiac cruise or a shorter hike. But not only that, we run a series of lectures on board. So as I say, our guides are extremely well experienced, so we'll be running lectures on the local wildlife, we'll be running lectures on sort of glaciers, the ice formations, the local culture and history. So it's a real educational experience once you're on board as well. But not only that, there are, on both of our ships, we've got hot tub, we've got a sauna on board. So this is a perfect place to unwind from a real day out in the cold, a day out of exploring, sitting in the hot tub with a beer, watching the glaciers go by, watching the icebergs. But all of your food and drinks are included as well. So typically breakfast and lunch are more of a get up and go buffet style, and then sometimes we will actually even have lunch, like as maybe a packed lunch if we've got a bigger excursion. But typically lunch will be back on the boat, but then your evening meal is more of a sit down formal meal, and there's drinks, snacks provided throughout the day. But the chefs on board, we can cater for any dietary requirements. The cuisine is really, really good on board. It's typically Norwegian, it's typically your Scandinavian affair. The chefs will often actually be fishing sometimes to have fresh seafood for dinner, but it's a real home from home comfort style cooking experience on board. But not only that, we do provide you with the muck boots. So the muck boots are the boots that you'll wear when you go out in the Zodiacs. So often when we're disembarking the Zodiacs, we'll be stepping into water, we'll be stepping onto ice, will be maybe muddy terrain. So those muck boots will keep you warm and dry. Obviously, you are more than welcome to bring your own walking boots, but we would just strongly recommend they're fully waterproof. And we provide you with an all-in-one suit as well. So the all-in-one suit will keep you warm, it will keep you dry when you're out in the Zodiacs. You still need to bring the good base layers, good fleeces. We provide full packing lists, but you've got that for protection and comfort. And now, early season, East Greenland, if we're early September, you might not necessarily need the all-in-one suit. The temperatures can still be quite warm at that time of the year. They can be sort of 5-10 degrees. But as we head later into September, into October, the temperatures do drop, and you will probably need those all-in-one suits for extra layer of warmth and dryness. Now, as I've mentioned, so Secret Atlas, we have got 2 expedition vessels. So These vessels are actually, we've got the MV Freya and the MV Vikingfjord. They are both located in Svalbard from April to late August, and then in late August they will make the journey over to East Greenland. So both are beautiful 12-passenger expedition vessels, both been fully repurposed into expedition vessels. Each boat has got 7 guest cabins, all with a private ensuite. So we have 1 fixed double, we have 4 twin cabins, and then we've got 2 single cabins as well. But both ships have got really nice expedition lounges, dining area, and they got really good deck space as well. So for photography outdoors, they've got really nice space. And because we are going into icy waters, both of them have got a very high ice class rating. The Freya is actually 1A, so she's one of the strongest ships of her size around. And as we go over to our second ship, the Vikingfjord, she is a 1B ice class, so she's still got a very high ice class rating. She can get into most places. Again, 1 double cabin. We've got 4 twin or double cabins on the Vikingfjord and 2 single cabins. This is a little lounge we have up in the bridge. It's one of the best places to sit. And if there is any wildlife spotted, it's probably going to be spotted around from the bridge. But the Vikingfjord has got really nice interiors. She's got really big, this is a wraparound expedition lounge, and then she's got a nice dining area as well. But as you can see, there's lots of outside deck space. There's a really nice balcony at the rear of this expedition lounge on the Vikingfjord, but as well you can get up the front of the ship as well. Really good options for photography. Now, at Secret Atlas, so sustainability is very important for us. Not only are we members of IACO and certain organizations which hold us accountable and put certain measures in place to limit our impact on the environment, but also when we are in destination, we like to do as much as possible. So when we're going out in the Zodiacs, they've always got litter pickers, rubbish cleaning equipment on board, and you will be surprised by the amount of plastics and fishing equipment that we will find on our trips. So when we make a landing, if we see any of these plastics, we want to bring them back and dispose of them properly. We want to leave these destinations in a better condition than when we found it. But not only rubbish cleaning, we also, on certain voyages, this company is called Yachts for Science. So in 2024, they came on a number of our expeditions, and they're running a project which is mapping the seabed. So they're mapping the seabed for fauna and any life down there, and you'll be surprised. We're in Arctic waters, but they drop their RVs, and the colours you get are incredible. So they are monitoring the sea life. So if you're interested in that, they do run reports, but they will be joining us on some of our expeditions. They don't interfere with their itinerary. They go about their work at other times, but it's very encouraged that the guests get involved as well. So they'll be dropping their RVs, there's monitors, and you can see what is exactly down there. So it's a real unique experience. And lastly, so we are part of 1% for the planet. So a total of 1% of our total revenue will go to 1% for the planet, and they are essentially an umbrella charity. They distribute that funds through a number of different causes, but a real focus on conservation, so marine conservation, wildlife conservation, and climate focused charities as well. So that is a brief overview of East Greenland as a destination. So I can see some questions have come in during that, so I thought we'll take some time and answer some of your questions. Okay, so one question we have, is drone photography allowed? So unfortunately, drone photography is not allowed. As members of IACO, we are not permitted to fly drones. So yeah, unfortunately, no drone photography. One question, how big are the icebergs in Greenland? Would you say they are very impressive? So yes, the icebergs in Greenland are some of the biggest I've seen. You're not going to see any bigger icebergs, maybe down in Antarctica. As I say, the Vikingfjord, when I was on her in September, these icebergs were 2-3 times the size of the Vikingfjord. So we're probably talking sort of 30-40 meter tall icebergs. So really tall icebergs. How much time will be spent exploring on land? So that is a good question. Typically, as I say, we tend to make 2 excursions a day. Sometimes it depends on what we see. So if we're having really amazing wildlife encounters, especially in East Greenland, if we see the musk ox, they can be quite a territorial, aggressive animal. So we'll typically stay on the zodiacs for photography, but we do make landings. Sometimes we will make landings if we see the muskox in the distance. It's just we have to be very careful. We need to stay as a group, and then the muskox will actually think we are a herd, a family, and it will forget about us. But if we were just one person, or if one person strayed off, especially a male muskox might be threatened, thinking that's a different male muskox. We will be making excursions on land anywhere from 2 to 4 hours, dependent on what we're seeing and how active the group want to be. So why is a national park trip so special and so much longer? Is there a better chance to see wildlife there? The national park trip is much longer because it is a combination trip. So we do want to still see the beauty and the culture within Scoresbysund, but we also want to explore the national park. Now, the national park is a real unexplored destination. Secret Atlas is one of the only expedition microcruise operators to go up to the national park. But it is wildlife. We have got probably a higher percentage chance of seeing it up at the national park, but it's never guaranteed. It's wildlife. We want to give you the best chance, and we have that up in the national park. It's been a long process coming to get the permits for the national park. The Greenlandic authorities, they don't give out these permits easily, so we've been very fortunate. Our operation team here at Secret Atlas have done a brilliant job in securing these permits. So yeah, we're very excited to offer this unique destination to everyone. Have you seen narwhals on any of your trips? So that's a really good question. And when I was speaking about the wildlife and the whales, I envisioned it was going to come up and we were going to talk about it in the Q&A. But yes, we have seen narwhals. So narwhals are a very elusive animal. Scoresbysund have actually put a lot of measures in place to protect narwhals. There's a fjord system in the very southern tip of Scoresbysund, which is now closed off to marine traffic, and that is called a narwhal protection zone. But they are still very elusive animals. So again, it's wildlife. We never guarantee it. They are one of the hardest marine species to spot in the world. Chances of seeing it, they still remain fairly low, but we're always looking. And yeah, being on one of the smallest ships, we have got more of a chance of seeing them. As I say, it isn't something we see on every trip. So if you're booking just to see narwhals, it's an incredibly difficult animal to spot. Can you please say more about the difference between Greenland and Svalbard? So Svalbard is very much wildlife focused. There are quite a few fjord systems in Svalbard. It's been a protected area for a long time. It's a very densely populated archipelago. There's a lot of wildlife opportunities. So it's a real big breeding ground for seals, for walruses, polar bears as well. And it's also a big birding destination. So you've got some of the biggest bird cliffs over in Svalbard. So Svalbard is more focused on wildlife, whereas East Greenland is really more about the landscapes and the local culture and those communities we visit. But also the icebergs. You do not get icebergs the size of which you get in Greenland in Svalbard. I would really say Greenland is more about the landscapes. Also, the added benefit of Greenland is the northern lights. So when we operate in Svalbard, it's 24 hours of daylight. So we've got zero chances of northern lights. But in Greenland, as I say, even on our early trips in early September, we've still got about 6 hours of daylight. So we've got chances of seeing them. What happens if there is stormy weather? We are always monitoring the weather. So not only the captain, but the expedition team are always keeping an eye on the weather. If it is stormy weather, we will try and get deeper into the fjord, into more protected waters. We want to keep the boat as calm as possible. So yeah, we'll always be monitoring the weather systems. Will we be meeting any Greenland sharks? So that's a really, really good question. So the Greenlandic shark, they're actually a relatively recent discovery, but they are one of the longest living sharks. So they can live up to 400 years. They are in Scoresbysund, but Scoresbysund as a whole, the fjord system, it's incredibly deep waters, which is perfect for the Greenlandic shark. They're very deep, so we got very little chances of seeing the Greenlandic sharks, unfortunately. What are the temperatures in the Sund in October? So yeah, in October, so this is when the fjord and the winter does start to return. We are looking around 0 degrees, going into minus figures during the night, anywhere from sort of 5 degrees down to sort of -10 in early October. We got a question here about are guests allowed on the deck at night? So yes, our ship is an open ship. All areas are open to guests. There will be at certain times. The only area is on the sort of top deck, where we've got sort of our radar equipment and moving equipment. So guests aren't allowed on that deck. But other than that, it's pretty much an open ship. The only caveats to that is when we are launching the Zodiacs. So the Zodiacs are launched with a crane. So we'll just keep you away from where that is happening. But yeah, it's an open ship. So what is the probability of running into a big tour ship whilst in the fjords? That is a good question, and this is enough reason for us to go further north into Northeast Greenland National Park. Once we get up there, our chances of running into any other ship are very remote. In Scoresbysund, there are a few operators, but yeah, we are one of the only operators which focus purely on Scoresbysund. A lot of other operators on the bigger ships will just be visiting for a day or two. So yeah, we spend the most amount of time in these destinations, which gives you that best interaction. How stable is the ship? As we've previously said, the ship is a smaller ship, but we are typically focused on the fjord regions. So we will be in the protected waters, we'll be in the calmer waters. Obviously, the caveat to that is when we do go up to the national park on that particular trip, we do have an open sea lake. As again, our itineraries are very flexible. And if we see there's a bit of bad weather, if there's a storm, we will either go up a couple of days early or we will delay it by a couple of days. So we have that flexibility, and we're always taking into account what the best experience for the guest will be. That brings us nicely on to the next question. On the combination trip, how many days are in the national park and how many days are in the Sund? So typically it is an even split in an ideal world, but that's by no means the case. If we see the weather is particularly good up in the national park, we might go and head up in the national park first. And if it's particularly good and we're having good sightings, we're having good interactions, we might stay up there a day or two longer. Typically it's an even split, but as I say, we have that flexibility. We have a couple of questions about the pricing. We've posted links to our dates and rates in the chat, but after this call as well, you will receive an email with a bit more information on our trips. Just have a look on our website for all the dates and rates. Our 2025 schedule has been fully announced, so all the dates are available for that. And by the end of next week, our 2026 schedule will be fully announced as well. So you'll have full visibility. But there might be a few questions that we haven't quite got round, but I'm a bit conscious of time, but we will be sure to follow up. And just lastly, to finish, I did want to introduce you to our team here at Secret Atlas. As I say, we will be following up, but if anyone has any more questions, wants to have a chat, wants to have a call, just drop us an email, sales@secretatlas.com. Dependent on where you're based. So if you're based sort of North America, Southern America region, my colleague Anna will be most likely getting back to you. If you're in Europe, Asia, Australasia, then it's my colleague Margarita. But yeah, do drop us an email, get in touch. We look forward to welcoming you on board one of our trips very soon. All the best, everyone.